often we think that debt freedom is just breaking free from the financial bondage of money. But true freedom is in your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state. Because if we are not whole in those areas, then those areas will show up and manifest itself as debt.
You're listening to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast with award-winning digital strategist, author, speaker, and personal branding expert, Francine Belailly. Francine is on a mission to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs to position themselves as an authority in their industry, attract their ideal clients, and impact millions of people globally. Looking to redefine the life you want to live and your best life now? Welcome to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast, the place to be to hear inspirational stories of thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and Francine herself with practical strategies to get more meaning in your work and in your life. Make the money you deserve and lead a movement to change the world.
If you are a purpose-driven entrepreneur, you've got big ideas and great vision, but your business perhaps doesn't reflect that, which means that you are putting all this work, your heart and soul into it, but you are not really seeing the return because nobody really knows who you are. You are not visible to those that matter the most. It doesn't have to be that way. If you are tired to live a life with no impact and are looking to position yourself as an authority in your field, attract your ideal client and impact thousands globally, book a complimentary 30-minute mini brand audit session with me today at francinebelailly.com/audit. That's Francinebeley.com/audit. This 30-minute call can radically change the way you see your brand and how others see it as well. I only have a handful of this free mini session each week, so book your complimentary session today at francinebeley.com/audit. Welcome to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast. I am your host, Francine Belailly. We are continuing the season 7 of the show where we are focusing on uncovering the money mindset and habits that prevents us from achieving what we want in life and how we can create new empowering habits. Hi, today I'm excited to have on this show Ramesha Nicole, an international teacher, transformational speaker, and coach who helps high-achieving women around the world shift their perspective on debt from the inside out by giving them the tools needed to pay their debt off for real this time. So her journey to freedom began when she received her wake-up call 26 hours before she was scheduled to go on an 11-month mission trip journey. Hi, Ramesha.
Hi, Francine. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Welcome to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so elated and elated to be here with you today.
My pleasure. Tell me, in your own words, what you currently do.
So currently I am a financial coach, but from the perspective of a holistic approach. What I do is I help high achieving women really shift their perspective on what it means to get free from their debt. But my personal belief is that true debt freedom isn't just about the money, that real debt freedom is in your mind, body, and soul. And so I take them through a process, what I refer to as the 4 phases of internal transformation, where phase number 1 is we take a look at past lessons, those things, those verbal influences, those modelings of the things that we heard and seen as it related to money. Then we move into phase number 2, which is your present identity and how who you are currently affects your money. From there, we move into phase number 3, which is penetrating growth, where we really learn what it takes to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to begin to put systems in place to help us get free from debt. And then from there, we move into the final phase, which is phase number 4, which is progressive evolution and how to actually maintain the momentum to break free from debt. But again, the debt is just the byproduct of everything else. And so I really want to help us to release those things of the past that we learned so that the past no longer hinders the way we show up in the world and the way we manage our money.
I'm going to come back to this 4-step process in a moment. But before I get there, can you tell me what your purpose is in
My
life?
purpose really is to help people experience true freedom. Again, we think that debt freedom is just breaking free from the financial bondage of money, but true freedom is in your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state. Because if we are not whole in those areas, then those areas will show up and manifest itself as debt in our lives. And my personal mantra or motto is that you are not healed and whole, right? It's not only going to affect your finances, but it's going to infect your finances. And so I am a freedom fighter. I am on this mission and path to helping people really experience freedom from the inside out.
That's wonderful. Why are you so passionate about helping people finding their, freedom with debt and their financial state and all their whole being?
Well, it actually happened for me when, as you read in my bio, 26 hours before I was scheduled to go on an 11-month mission trip journey through with an organization here in the States. And I'm a God girl, I'm a Christian, and so I abide and live my life by the principles found in the Christian faith. And the Lord told me 26 hours before I was scheduled to go on my journey to stop running and to deal with my debt. It was a wake-up call for me, but then I soon learned that I wasn't just running from the debt, right? That I was really running from myself, right? I was running from something that had happened in my childhood, right? There was a traumatic moment in my childhood that continued to keep me in the cycles of debt, right? Showing up, trying to people please, keep up with this certain persona of who I was. And in all actuality, I was really running from that moment, and that moment was manifesting itself as debt. And so I really, really want to help people, because we in our culture and society, we think that getting out of debt is just good money management tools, right? We think it's about the budgeting, but it goes beyond that. And so I am really passionate about this because I wish that someone would have taught me that. And so I truly feel that my purpose in life and my purpose and my calling is to really help people to shift their mindset on what it means to be free.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. We're going to talk about that later. But before we get there, can you tell me something that people don't know about you, Ramesha?
One thing that people do not know about me is, oh, wow. No one's ever really asked me that question.
Something that you may not be, vocal about.
Something that I'm really not vocal about is that I love really hard. I love hard. I am a hard lover.
Really?
When I love someone, I love every core being to them, right? So I know a lot of people know me as very friendly and very kind and very compassionate, but I love hard. And dark chocolate, I know that there are the 5 love languages, but dark chocolate is my love language. I know it's not one of the 5 love languages, but dark chocolate is mine.
You add that. That's the 6th one.
Yes, that's the 6th love language, dark chocolate.
Okay, good. So now tell me, when we come back to, your own pattern and where you pick those kind of unhelpful beliefs around money, you touch a bit, on your childhood. Would you want to explain a little bit where those beliefs and where these patterns or, unhelpful behavior came from?
Well, honestly, when I moved back, because I lived in Qatar for the 2018-2019 school year, I was a school counselor. But when I came back to the States, one of the things that I learned, I kind of did this hypnosis with Marissa Pierce. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of her, through a platform called Mind Valley, where she took us
I know
back.
Mind Valley. Yeah.
Where she took us back into a moment in time, and somewhere along the line, a limiting belief, when you hear, it's it's really referred to as those verbal influences, the things that you hear. Somewhere along the line in my subconscious mind, I developed this belief, right, that I would never be able to live outside of the realm of where my family grew up. Right. I never would have thought that I would be the one to go abroad, right, to live on the other side of the world, because everyone in my family either went to the military, right, and the military just was not my path. But somewhere along the line, I never thought that I would experience so much more outside of my scope of or realm of life, right? And so hearing things like, I don't have any money. We don't have any money. Money doesn't grow on trees, right? You hear those things. Well, in all actuality, money does grow from trees because money comes from a tree. A tree is a plant and it is a fruit of the, right? And so we hear those things growing up. And so those things take root. But again, as I mentioned, there was a moment in my childhood and I really realized how just that moment caused me to seek for things like validation, fear of failure, right? All of that began to manifest itself as debt because one year, and I just really realized recently where that third trip was. But in one year, I went to Miami 3 times and charged it on a credit card because that's what everyone else was doing, right? So just really being able to, tap back into how all of that played a part in my debt.
Yeah, so that's yes, very important to really get back to understand where those come from, so then we can do something about them. So what would you say is then one of the lowest moments in your life where perhaps you really decided that now was the time for you to really shift your, the course of your life, to really sort, your money mindset specifically?
Well, again, I lived abroad in Qatar. And so when the Lord told me to stop running, shortly thereafter, I landed a job as an international school counselor. During that process, I was working 2 jobs. I was living at home with my sister and my brother-in-law, and a good girlfriend was currently a school counselor in Qatar. And she said, hey, we're looking for an elementary school counselor. I know you're looking to pay off some debt. This will be a great way for you to come, pay off your debt and save some money. So I prayed about it, and the opportunity presented itself. And so I'm in Qatar, living my best life, all of the different cultures. I mean, it's literally, to me, in my eyes, it was heaven on earth. It was just like a melting pot of cultures. And I'm from Houston, Texas, and it's kind of the same. So it really wasn't too much of a culture shock, but it was a culture shock from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a moment where I was scheduled to come home for our winter break, and I found myself leaning over the bathroom sink. We lived in a little small refurbished hotel building, and our restrooms were very, very small. And I found myself leaning over the bathroom sink, just crying and bawling. And I'm like, Lord, I'm so broken. I need you to fix me. And that is when the shift began to happen. That's when, he really began to help me tap into, those childhood moments, the moments when I was a little girl, going back and healing, things that people had said about me, things that people had said to me. I really began to listen to my now coach. Her name is Patrice Washington. She has a podcast entitled Redefining Wealth, and really just listening to her podcast really began to help me shift my perspective that it wasn't so much about me. There's this cultural and societal norm that says go and chase the bag. I didn't really want to go and chase money anymore. I really wanted to begin to chase purpose. And financial freedom is a part of your purpose. But once you begin to really understand why you are in debt, then you're able to begin to shift your mindset. I had to learn that money was not my enemy. I had to learn that money was not working against me. I had to really begin to shift my mindset that, you hear that money is evil, money is the root of all evil. Money is not the root of all evil. Love of money, when you begin to idolize it, right? And so I really began to shift my perspective on debt freedom and money mindset. I had to learn that money was all around me. Money was a tool, and that lack and poverty was not my birthright, right? So just really shift and understanding that, this wasn't going to be an overnight process, because we live in this microwave society where we have this instant gratification, where we want things to just happen for us immediately. But I had to really learn that, even though it took me maybe 5 minutes to put myself in that much amount of debt, right, it wasn't going to take 5 minutes for me to get out. And so just really learning patience with myself. And so those are just a couple of the shifts that begin to happen. Again, as I mentioned, forgiving people. Forgiveness is a part of debt freedom. There's a scripture in the Bible, and it says, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. But the same measure that you extend forgiveness, the same measure that you extend to other people is going to be extended to you. And so, as I mentioned, I had to go and I had to forgive people, right? If I wanted my debt to be forgiven, if I wanted to pay off my debt, I had to forgive people. I had to forgive, myself. I had to overcome things like shame and embarrassment, because for my trip, I had raised over $11,000 to $12,000 worth of support. So forgiving myself, for letting people down, what I thought was letting people down. And so it really was a transformative experience for me. And that's just a small entity of all of the things that I began to experience as I paid off my debt. And lo and behold, after those 10 months of living there, I paid off the $10,000 worth of credit card debt.
Wow, that is powerful. And how do you get to start forgiving yourself? Can you give us some tips of how people can go about forgiving themselves?
In order to forgive yourself, first you have to know that you've already been forgiven. I think too often we hold, and it's okay to hold yourself to a higher standard, but there is no such thing as perfection. There is no such thing as being perfect. And there's a movie called Why Did I Get Married, where Janet Jackson, and she said, perfect Patty messed up. And in my mind, I thought that I always had to have it together. And so just really looking at myself in the mirror and first acknowledging that I was already forgiven, and that at the end of the day, I was holding myself hostage, knowing that you are going to make mistakes, but when you fall, you get back up and you keep moving, right? And to not hold yourself hostage from the beauty of what life holds, right? Because we often try to live in a box. And so I would just say those things. First, know that you're forgiven, know that you're going to make mistakes. And the way that you think that people are judging you, they're really not. Yeah. They're really not judging you.
Yeah. Everything is usually in our own heads. And this is why, it's powerful when you say forgiving yourself, because you start from there. Because once you forgive yourself and you start to really allow yourself to be who you are, and, so the rest, you can manage that. But if you don't start with yourself and always seeking validation from the external world, this is never going to be a sustainable business, actually. So that's really fantastic, Ramesha. So I'd like now to come back to your 4-step process that you outlined at the beginning and how you use that to help people. Can you go and break that down again, those 4-step process, and how you use that to even shift your limiting belief and start that journey of transformation? Are you feeling like you are all over the place and lack direction in your life, in your career, or in your business, and aren't sure what you should be doing next? You need to take the 5-day to discover your passion challenge to reset your priorities and reignite your life as I guide you over the 5 days to discover what truly lights you up, so you can start living urgently doing what you truly love. You can access it right now at francinebeleye.com/passion challenge. That's francinebeleye.com/passion challenge. Can you go and break that down again, those 4-step process, and how you use that to even shift your limiting belief and start that journey of transformation?
Yeah, sure. And so I call those stages the 4 phases. I call them the 4 phases of internal transformation and how they relate to our debt freedom. So again, phase number 1 is past lessons. Yeah. What are those things in your past that are continuing to show up in who you are, and it's continuing to show up in your life? And so what I mean by that, again, those verbal influences, what were those things that you heard that were said? What was said about money? Not just that, what were some things that were said to you? Growing up, and I have a couple of friends who can attest to this, we had our basic needs met, and people would often say, things about people's shoes, right? They would say things. And so when you get older, you try to say, well, I'm never going to make sure that happens again. But when you don't deal with the past, right, the things that were modeled, the experiences, when you don't deal with that, it begins to show up and manifest itself as debt in your adulthood life, because you're holding on to unforgiveness, but you're also trying to prove yourself, right, with the things that you purchase so that you never can feel that way again. Right? Because of the things of our past. And then from there, we flow into phase number 2, which is present identity. Often in this culture and society, we think that the number of degrees we have, We think the job that we have, we think the house that we live in, we think the car that we drive define us. But those things do not define you. And too often people are continuing to allow themselves, right, to remain in debt because they're trying to keep up with a certain image or a certain persona, right? Okay, and as we dig a little deeper, our core values, we get to the root of you. Who are you at your core? Right? Truly understanding who you are. And as a God girl, whose you are. Because again, no one's validation, if you don't validate yourself, no one's validation is ever going to be good enough for you. And so we take a look, we go really dive deep into that. And not only that, we take a look at our relationship with ourselves as how that relates to our relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And during my journey, I had to really heal my relationship with myself, and I had to heal my relationship with my money, right? And so that's phase number 2. So phase 1 is past lessons. Phase number 2 is present identity. And then phase number 3 is penetrating growth. I've really learned the meaning of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Is it a need or is it just a preference? Mm-hmm. Do I really need to purchase this? Why do I really feel the need to purchase this? Is there a void that I'm really trying to fill? Right? I feel lonely. So I'm just going to go and buy this box of buns. Did I even budget for that? Was that even a part of my budget? What void am I trying to fill? Right? What is it about the thing that I want to go and purchase right now? Now, let me give this disclaimer. I do not believe in denying yourself, right? That some of the things that you desire, but I do truly believe in the power of sacrifice. And so that is really the basis of that third phase, right? Really understanding the power of sacrifice. Because again, if we are in $10,000 worth of credit card debt, we've already done what I like to say, treat ourselves. You've already treated yourself enough, right? Really, why were you treating yourself? And then from there, we move into phase number 4, which is penetrating growth. And by maintaining the momentum, what does it really take to maintain the momentum to getting out of debt freedom, right? And that means creating boundaries around your money, creating boundaries with yourself, creating boundaries, with your friends. And there's this article that I read recently that talked about frenemies, right? Do you have people in your circle that are enemies to your finances? Right? And so being able to set those hardcore boundaries, and I like to call that those 4 phases kind of like the metamorphosis. And so once you do the work from the inside out, then you'll be able to experience the freedom, because you're getting rid of all of the stuff that was inside. And from there, it's going to manifest itself as freedom, not only just in your finances, but in your physical health. Right? Because so often we're working these jobs, we're running ourselves ragged to try to keep up or try to climb the corporate the corporate elevator. You're not the corporate ladder, rather. You're not eating correctly. You're eating out. You're spending unnecessarily money. You're not having taken the time for your friends, for your family. You're overeating, right? All of that shows up as debt. And so I like to call it a metamorphosis process. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there is this cultural norm that says, I got to go chase the bag. I got to get the bag. And I truly believe, and I began to shift that, before you can secure any bag on the outside, you first have to secure the bag on the inside. Become whole, become one with yourself, forgive others, let go of anything that is continuing to keep you hostage, and you'll be able to fully free yourself to not only experience debt freedom, but to truly walk in your purpose.
That's a wonderful, really explanation, very practical, step-by-step, strategy to get to this internal transformation. Do you have any kind of routine that you keep in mind all the time to make sure that those principles never leave your mind, and then you keep applying them over and over again?
One of the things that I do a lot is I journal. I'm very self-reflective, right? I'm very, very self-reflective. I've always been one who has sought personal development. Hence, my background is in education, but with school counseling, right? And just really just trying to become the very best version of myself. And so one of the things that I do is I check in with my budget frequently. I have an app. I have a group of girlfriends who we can have these uncomfortable conversations where we're currently checking in, like, okay, what am I really feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Right. So having that purposeful, I'm really big on now really formulating purposeful community, but just keeping those things at the forefront. I'm currently sitting in my study right now. And in front of me, I have a plan of some debt that I'm trying to pay off. So keeping the vision before me, right? Knowing that this is temporary, it's not forever. But as I continue to make those necessary, like small increment and changes in my life, then the things and the desires of my heart are going to begin to manifest itself. And I'm going to continue to get freer and freer and freer. And one thing is being honest with myself. Too often we lie to ourselves. No, get honest. What are you really feeling? Why are you really continuing to do the things that you're doing? One of the things that my best friend and I talked about on my recent podcast episode was oftentimes you got to get outside of yourself. I've learned to really get outside of myself, seeking wise counsel, again, building purposeful community and continuing to reflect, right? And holding myself accountable too.
I love that. I love that building purposeful community. That's so right. Popular kind of phrase that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with is really true, actually. If you don't have a purposeful community, if you have, people really who don't get, who are not on the same path of, where you are going, it's very hard to keep up with that. So I love your purposeful community, actually, and making sure that you're checking in, you hold yourself accountable, and then you don't drop back into old pattern, and you keep moving forward. Really, really beautiful. So now tell me, what is how do we now get to live a rich life right now, regardless the money that we have?
Know that every day is a blessing. When you wake up in the morning and you still have breath in your life, there is still purpose. And I know, as cliche as it sounds, I've really come to grips and terms with that. Life may not be the way that I want it to be, but every day that you wake up, you put one foot in front of the other. I actually had a client of mine reach out to me, and she asked, how could she finagle some of the extra money that she just got? And she and we were able to kind of come up with a system and a plan. And I said, you're doing it. You may not be there yet, but keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I would just say, keep putting one foot in front of the other. I know that our personal coach, Nicole Walters, always says that if you can just designate 30 minutes to getting to that thing that it is that you want to see come to pass. And I'm a firm believer that people make time for who and what they want to make time for. If it's important to you, you're going to make time to build it, whether that's in your health, whether making time to sit down and go over your budget, whether it's making time to go and work out for even 30 minutes, if it's making time to sit down and journal and reflect your thoughts, to take a pause from your busy job, right? Put one foot in front of the other and make time for whatever that thing is so that you can enjoy your full life. And just know that money isn't everything. Money is a tool. Money is a tool to help us live the life we want, right? Yeah. But there is so much richness and fullness in your purposeful community, in your friends, in your family. And so learning to be present, living in the moment. And that's something that I'm still working on, not so getting so caught up in looking forward to what's next, but really enjoying the right now.
Yeah, that is a really good reminder for all of us anyway. So we know, sometimes we know things, but, making them applicable every single day, maybe something which is hard. So really having this repetition of knowing that we just need to put one foot in front of the next every time is really important, actually, not to try to stress ourselves to live too much in the future or trying to figure out what's coming up and getting frustrated. So let's take one step at a time.
Yes, and not allowing yourself to be confined to a box. Think outside of the box. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Think outside of the box. You have your own unique thumbprint. You have your own unique identity. Everybody has a purpose. Everyone might not be called to a grand stage, but again, as my coach, my speaking coach, Patrice Washington, always says, even if you speak to a stage of one, that's still a stage. That's right? True.
That's so true. That's so very true. And I love that, actually, making sure that we have, a stage of one, actually, yes, I know some people sometimes just look at the size of whether it's their following and things like that. Say it's not big and things like that. But I think regardless how many you have, you just have to show up and just, keep going, and from there you can grow. Okay, so now let's go through some writing round questions. So when you travel, do you select your flight by the cheapest flight or by the duration?
It's a combination of both. I tend to think sometimes I have a little bit of adult ADHD.
Yeah.
So that's sitting down on a plane. Again, I lived in Qatar. So those 16 hours, I was up every 2 hours because I could not sleep. I couldn't sit down. So it has to be a combination of both. I do want to be mindful of my expenses, right? But then also, how long am I really going to sit down?
Yeah.
It's a combination of the two.
That's cool. So if you had now just the one laptop and $100 to start making money right now, what would you be doing?
I would really focus on monetizing my brand and utilizing my podcast platform.
Okay, that's cool. So what would you say is financial freedom for you?
To me, financial freedom is being free in your mind, your body, and your soul, and living the life that you love on your own terms.
So that's cool. And then what is your definition of meaningful work, meaningful life?
Meaningful work, meaningful life is doing that thing that you know that you've been called to do to impact the people that you've been called to impact.
That's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. So now the final piece of advice that you would like to pass on to our listeners to do more meaningful work and live a meaningful life.
My last piece of advice would be to begin to really shift your perspective on what it means to be free. Really begin to shift your perspective on what true freedom means to you. And once you get honest with yourself about what that really means and what that really looks like for you, not for someone else, then you'll be able to truly begin to experience debt freedom in every area of your life.
Amen. So, where can people find you and get in touch with you if they want to know more about what you do?
You can visit my website at rameshanicole.com. That is Ramesha, Ramesha, Nicole, Nicole.com. Or you can find me over on Instagram at Get Real Be Free. That's all one word, Get Real Be Free. And it is the same over on Facebook, Get Real Be Free. And I just opened up the doors to my new purposeful freedom fighter community. So you can find us over on Facebook. It's the Freedom Fighter Community hosted by Real Talk with Ramesha Nicole.
Super. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ramesha. That was a great pleasure to have you again and share your wisdom with all our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you again. I'm honored.
Thank you for listening to this episode. The show notes of this episode of the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life are available on my webpage, francineBeley.com/podcast. That's FRANCINEBELEYI.com/podcast with all the references shared on the show and other relevant resources as well. If you enjoy this podcast and want to show your love and support, share it with your friends and colleagues on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you hang out, because this will encourage me to keep bringing you an awesome show. And make sure that you subscribe to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all the app where you are listening to this podcast, so you don't miss any episode. And leave me a 5-star review as well, because that will mean that a lot of other people can see this show, and it will help me spread this message to many, many more people. So I will see you next week for another episode of the season 7. Until then, dream, act, and make an impact. Lots of love.